Okay, guest of honors here, as well as our Congressman Malinowski. Hello, honored guests. Welcome to Hillsborough. I'm Sean Lapine, Mayor of Hillsborough. I was told that we were having this meeting today and to just offer a few brief remarks before introducing the governor and our guest speakers about, obviously, the events that happened 1 year ago today. And I started writing down some notes, and I said, I don't need to write this down. I pretty much know what's going on. I was there. Everybody's got one of these, right? And we have, especially politicians, and meetings pop up, reminders, birthdays, all those kind of things. But quite honestly, September 1st, I don't need to be reminded what happened a year ago. I'm going to give you just a brief, my perspective of what happened. I was in Newport, Rhode Island, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Storm's hitting. I get a call from my daughter. House is flooding. Wife goes, "We're leaving." We packed up, left food in the refrigerator, jumped in my Jeep. 7 o'clock, long story short, between meandering and detours, I arrived in Hillsborough at noon the next day. Had to go all the way out to Hopewell and around to get into town. But as I got into New Jersey, it was right around daybreak. And I was driving down the Parkway, 78, 22, 28, and I started seeing things that I thought you would only see like in an apocalypse movie, cars and trucks thrown around like toy boxes. And of course, this is at 6 o'clock in the morning, so there's really nobody in the roads except me and my Jeep, going through water around giant rubble on 22 that came down the mountain into the car dealerships over there, at Mountain Chimney Rock Road, if you know where that is. And it's just, I had never seen devastation like that. And I've been through a lot of storms here in Hillsborough in the last 20 years, but God, how does 9 inches of rain come out of the sky in 2 hours? That's just unbelievable. But I remember, because I was there, as you were, waking up the next day, and the sky was like this. It was blue sky. Like if you didn't have a storm, you'd like go play golf or go to the beach. It was hard to believe that the night before, our EMS in Hillsborough, as it was around the state, were rescuing people, pulling people out of water, helicopters, boats, large loaders, anything they could get people out of homes with nothing on but the clothes on their back and the animals they could grab. And I get to the township building, and we have a shelter there of the people we rescued that day, and trying to give them some sense of comfort. And we're trying to find places for them to go. But the problem was, you couldn't get out of Hillsborough. People couldn't come get them. We couldn't get them to hotels, so they were there longer than they needed to be. But we only got them out. Our building transitioned to we did from recovery to helping those in need. Our multi-purpose room with our staff and all the volunteer Hillsborough, all the donations, we had a huge room full of clothing, food, cleaning supplies, and it basically opened up to anyone, everyone who needed help. That was what I was impressed with. The resiliency of our people of Hillsborough and the state of New Jersey, once the danger was over, getting out to help their fellow man. We're guiding people and crying with them as they're walking through, picking up clothes for their babies, for their wives, for their mothers, food. And they're very shy to take. We're almost forcing them to take something because it's there for them. Well, the governor came down shortly after that. He was kind enough to see our devastation in Hillsborough. Obviously, the president came down a week after that. And then the recovery and the rebuilding starts. All of our people aided our residents, as every municipality, to submit grants to FEMA, HUD, anyone that we could get money for these people to get some kind of help to rebuild their lives and their homes. And that's why we're here today. No, I don't need to be reminded on September 1st ever again, because I was there and you were there. But we're here together so that that memory gets faded and we remember what we did after that. And that's what makes us great. Governor, welcome to New Jersey. Welcome to Hillsborough again. A little better times and some better news. I yield to you. Thank you very much.
Unlike Sean, I do have to read this because otherwise I'll forget half of what I would say, but I just said to him privately that was incredibly powerful. So thank you to you and everybody here in this great community, your fellow elected officials, Doug Thompson and Bob Brenning, and for everybody here in this great community for welcoming us always so warmly. Deep thanks. And to you, to your very good points, Sean, and thank you for your leadership. What a difference in the level of activity here today versus a year ago today. I'm incredibly honored to be joined, in addition to the mayor and committeemen, by a cavalcade of great leaders. Congressman Tom Malinowski with us. Thank you, Tom. To his left. Shamelessly fishing for applause there, Tom. So I was to his left, and I want to acknowledge them as great partners. FEMA Region Administrator Dave Warrington. Dave, great to have you with us. I have not seen, is Pat Callahan here? I know he was trying, members of the state police are here, so thank you guys. Department of Community Affairs Deputy Commissioner Sam Biavatni is with us. Sam, great to have you. And pretty much the entirety of the Somerset County government leadership is here. We'll hear from her County Commissioner Director Chanel Robinson, Deputy Director Melanie Morano, Commissioner Sarah Suey, Doug Singletary, Hillsborough Zone, Paul Drake, County Clerk Steve Peter, Sheriff Darren Russo. Is Tina here? I haven't seen Tina. I know Tina was trying to make it surrogate, Tina Jallo. My chair, the one and only Peg Schaefer. Peg, love you and God bless you. And I want to acknowledge there are a bunch of folks from our team, but one in particular I want to acknowledge is Dan Kelly, the big man to my left, who oversees, literally the big man, who oversees all of the emergency operations in our front office. He worked for a long time for the Attorney General. Governor Christie pulled him in for Superstorm Sandy, and by the way, we're going to be acknowledging the 10th anniversary of that next month, and Dan has stayed on, and sadly, because of events like this with expanded responsibility, so to you and your teammates, thank you. Colleen Morris here, by the way, Mayor of Fanwood. Nice to see you, Colleen. And so with all those introductions, as Sean alluded to, and I will reiterate, this September 1st is noticeably different than exactly 1 year ago today, when you all know, but the remnants of Hurricane Ida, by then a tropical storm, slowly moved across New Jersey. And when those remnants did, they unleashed one of the most widespread and significant rain events in our state's history, generated one of the most widespread and damaging flood events in our history, and led us to suffer one of our most widespread and significant natural disasters in state history. Rain and flooding and havoc up north, tornadoes in places like Mullica Hills and other spots that touch down south. But closer to here, more than 10 inches of rain not 15 miles away in Tom's hometown in East Amwell, nearly 9 inches in Manville, just shy of 8 3/4 inches here in Hillsborough. And those are just 3 of the communities which got several weeks or even several months worth of rain in just a matter of hours. 30 of our fellow New Jerseyans were killed, including 2 precious souls here in Hillsborough, the most of any of the 9 states, by the way, that felt Ida's impact. Even a year on, we're still tallying up the dizzying costs of total damages to homes and businesses and to roads and other infrastructure. And even a year on, there are, just let this little fellow go by me there, there are still families working to rebuild their lives and their homes. To be sure, there are still many who are not fully back on their feet. I mentioned the troopers. I also want to give acknowledgement to the firefighters, first responders, all members of law enforcement who every day are heroic, but they were particularly heroic on that day. In the days following Ida, as Sean mentioned, my wife and I, either together or separately, toured some of the hardest hit communities and neighborhoods, including here. And we saw unspeakable devastation, homes washed away, neighborhood streets lined with piles and piles of ruined furniture, carpeting, and everything else that makes a house a home. Years of memories washed away literally in an instant. Yet, as the mayor also alluded to, as we saw the very worst to happen in New Jersey, we also saw the very best of New Jersey. Neighbors coming together to help each other clean up, strangers whose own homes were left untouched pitching in to help clean up a neighbor or even another community, volunteers setting up distribution sites for food and cleaning supplies, and our federal partners coming in to help families and towns begin the process of rebuilding, led by the President of the United States. Or in some cases, by the way, not just rebuilding, but making the hard, with a heavy heart, but the right call to not rebuild. Like right here in Hillsborough, where 3 properties at least, Sean, that I'm aware of, that have been impacted by repeat flooding are going to be purchased at fair market value through FEMA's mitigation funding so that they can be demolished and forever taken off the storm damage, rebuild, repeat merry-go-round. Not an easy decision to make, for sure. Over the past year, more than $650 million has been put forward to help our communities get back off the mat, including more than $250 million in FEMA direct household and individual assistance to more than 88,000 families. Think about that. More than $260 million in low-interest Small Business Administration loans and direct grants, and $56 million to municipalities like Hillsborough to help cover some of the staggering costs of cleanup and repair. This past spring, about 20 miles from here in Lambertville, another hard-hit community, by the way, we announced an additional $50 million for Blue Acres buyouts, another $30 million in FEMA hazard mitigation grant program funds to help Ida-impacted homeowners elevate their properties to protect from repeated floods, and $10 million in DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, community stormwater assistance grants to help communities statewide prepare for the next storm. And I'm not even mentioning the many hundreds of millions of dollars in damages covered through the National Flood Insurance Program. So today I am proud to announce our next steps. To begin with, we are moving forward with the process to push out about $283 million in HUD Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery funds, which New Jersey was awarded 3 months ago. We're going to put these funds to use helping homeowners restore their storm-damaged homes, to supplement rental housing costs for storm-impacted low-income rental families, provide zero-interest forgivable loans to the owners of damaged rental properties so they can make the repairs necessary to get that unit in move-in condition and back on the housing market, to support the development of resilient and affordable housing in lower flood risk areas and buy out residential properties in flood-prone areas. And we're also going to make $1 million available to provide support services, including house counseling and legal aid to Ida-impacted homeowners and renters. Developed by our great Lieutenant Governor Sheila Y. Oliver and her team at the DCA, the HUD Disaster Recovery Action Plan is out, I believe, as of now for public comment, Dan. And we welcome input from Ida-impacted residents and communities on how best to spend this federal funding. And we're going to start an aggressive push through the Office of Emergency Management to work with property owners and community leaders to get New Jersey's fair share of $3 billion in newly available FEMA grant funds earmarked for homeowners and local resilience projects. Tying all of this together will be a new online resource for residents, for small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and local governments to get all the information they may need to recover from a disaster, and not just Ida, but any disaster, and to better prepare for the next one. This new site, disasterhelp.nj.gov, again, it's disasterhelp.nj.gov, will put everything in one place. It will also include an interactive Create Your Disaster Recovery Plan tool on the homepage to help you more quickly locate the programs that are best suited to help you. So while we set aside today to remember the devastation, the lives lost, and to honor the tremendous resilience of our communities and the heroism of our first responders, we are also looking to the future. And let there be no doubt, again, I want to repeat this, we're not patting ourselves in the back, we're not spiking any footballs. There are still lots of people out there who are not yet on their feet. And we know some of these programs, just the way they work, can be painful to work your way through. They take time, but I will say this, we will stay with you until you are on your feet. Floyd, Sandy, Irene, Ida, all names that New Jersey would like to forget, but they share a common thread. They each devastated our state. They each reminded us that the next storm is just a matter of when, sadly, and not if. Bless you. They each gave us a clear view into our future, that if we do not take strong and decisive steps against climate change, we will unfortunately continue to live these realities. We're not yet done putting back together what Ida tore to shreds, as I said, but today we're ready to move forward to complete the job of repairing and preparing, and together we will get there. Thank you all again for welcoming me always so graciously to Hillsborough. With that, please help me welcome your outstanding Congressman Tom Malinowski.
Thank you, Governor Murphy. Thanks for coming back to Hillsborough. Sean, to all of the officials here who have helped us get to this point of almost full recovery. I know there's still much more work to be done. Sean, your story reminded me of my own. We were in Washington the day the storm hit, and of course, like everybody else, we did not expect it to be what it was. At some point that evening, I got a message from one of my neighbors in East Amwell telling me that there was water on the street above my house. And I couldn't believe it because that had never happened before. My house was built in the 18th century. And so I knew this was bad. The next morning, I tried to get back. There were no trains. Finally found somebody to drive me home, and our first stop was Hillsborough before even seeing what had happened to my house. And you were there, Governor, and we began the process that continues today to help people overcome the horrific tragedy that we all experienced together. We all remember the images of that day. We remember the pain of losing 30 New Jerseyans to the floods. We remember the heroism of the first responders. If not for them, 30 would have been 300 or far more. We remember the extraordinary apocalyptic images, the Somerset County Patriot Stadium engulfed in water. The image that really stuck with me, because it was so scary, was the image of water almost overwhelming the Raritan Millstone Water Treatment Facility, which serves this whole region of central New Jersey. And there's an important story there, because in 2018, that water treatment facility spent some money to raise their flood walls by 4 feet. And the goal was to be prepared for a 500-year storm. Think about that, 500-year storm. And the floodwaters from Ida came within 3 feet of overwhelming those new flood walls, right? And we know that the next storm, if we don't take the actions that we should, could even be worse. So we all worked together. We got the emergency declaration from the president. We got FEMA in very rapidly. We got assistance from FEMA to around 8,500 households in Somerset County alone, many more across the state of New Jersey. As we heard, a lot of help from municipalities for the county to help rebuild. I worked with Somerset County on a lot of these grants, including a federal grant to restore the trails along the Raritan River. I worked with you, Sean, on funding that we passed in the House of Representatives in the federal budget for Hillsborough as part of your recovery and rebuilding effort. But here's my central point today. That's not nearly enough, because we cannot continue this endless cycle, you referred to it, governor, this endless cycle of flooding and rebuilding. That's no way to live. We need two things that we are actually taking action on in the United States Congress. It's rare to be able to say that, but it is true today. Number one, we need to invest billions and billions of dollars in this country in making our infrastructure and our communities more resilient. In that Ida relief bill that we got through Congress very quickly after the emergency, we managed to get money in that bill to help the Army Corps of Engineers finally complete the Greenbrook flood control project, which began in the 1970s. Absolutely essential to protect this whole area of central New Jersey against flooding. And in the infrastructure bill that passed last year, $17 billion for the Army Corps to do that kind of engineering work, and billions of dollars more to help communities across this country better plan for and protect themselves against flooding. That's absolutely essential. And it's also essential that all of us in New Jersey and beyond update our rules, our stormwater management practices to take into account the weather that's happening today, right? Not the weather that was happening 20 or 30 years ago. So that's job one. Job two is recognizing that as a country and as a global community, we've got to do something about weather that is killing us. We have to do something about the underlying causes of these increasingly extreme storms that are affecting every part of this country. In New Jersey, we know there's no debate in New Jersey that climate change is real. To us, climate change it's 5 feet of water in your basement. It's the Hillsborough fire and police departments becoming a navy and rescuing people in boats from their homes far away from any coastline. And we've got to do something. And fortunately, to some, I would say surprisingly, this summer Congress actually did something. We passed the biggest investment in the history of this country, in the history of any country, in fighting climate change. Investments that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions in this country and reduce the pollution that makes the air we breathe unsafe by 40% by the year 2030, and enable the United States to be the leader that we must in bringing the entire world in this direction, while helping us also improve our economy by being the world leader in building the clean energy technologies of the future. That's incredibly important. That's a game changer. That's what we need to do to make sure these storms don't get worse and worse and worse, so that that water treatment plant doesn't have to build 10 more feet, 20 more feet of flood wall against what would happen if we were not taking those types of actions. So we're here today to look back a year, but it's much more important that we look ahead, that we plan for the future. We're beginning to do that at the federal level in the United States, thanks to all the representatives that you guys sent there over the last few years, and I'm absolutely committed to continuing to make that progress with you. Thank you again so very much. And we'll now hear from Mr. David Warrington, who's the Regional Administrator for FEMA for this region.
Thank you. Good morning, Governor and panel here. We mourn the tragic loss of life from the storm over a year ago, but we continue to work closely with the state to better prepare ourselves against future disasters. FEMA has been and always will be a committed partner with the state of New Jersey, and continue to work through your office, Governor, as well as Colonel Callahan, New Jersey State Police, and the New Jersey OEM family. Governor Murphy mentioned some of the funding FEMA and other federal agencies have provided since Ida that impacted New Jersey last year, including $250 million towards the Individual Assistance Program for residents for the state of New Jersey. At the time, President Biden committed to the state that the federal government would be here to support you throughout the recovery. I'm proud to stand here today and tell you that we are working hard to continue that commitment. FEMA will be here working hand in hand with the state until we are fully recovered from Ida. Part of this commitment is helping New Jersey secure as much federal funding as possible until every community is prepared for the next storm. Governor Murphy mentioned the recently announced $3 billion BRIC program nationally to address future risks from natural disasters such as hurricanes, flooding, wildfires, droughts, extreme heat. The BRIC program is a historic investment by the Biden-Harris administration, aimed at boosting community resilience and reducing the suffering caused by disasters. I promise to work with New Jersey and ensure the state sees all of the benefits the federal programs can provide. Lastly, I'll close with this. We are now at the height of hurricane season. Early on, all of the forecasters, modelers predicted this is going to be an above-average hurricane season. We've been lucky thus far, but we are just in prime time, September, October, for the East Coast to be vulnerable. With that, and as we learned last year, even the minor storms, the storms that we necessarily don't think will be impactful, turned out to be tremendously devastating to infrastructure, communities, and individuals. Now is the time to be prepared. As the governor alluded to, disasterhelp.nj.gov is a great resource on the federal level. Ready.gov is a great resource. I would encourage all New Jerseyans to visit those websites for more information on what steps to take to make a plan for you and your families. It is important that we are going to need to be ready for the next storm. Thank you.
To Dave, thank you and your FEMA colleagues, including the administrator. She has been terrific. And Tom, to you and all the work you and your colleagues have done to get the funds that we need directed to New Jersey and getting our fair share. Couple of more important folks. Please, I mentioned the phalanx of leaders representing Somerset County. They do an outstanding job. It's a county that runs incredibly well. Please help me welcome the Commissioner Director, Chanel Robinson, herself a great leader.
Thank you for those heartfelt comments, Mayor. It started making me reflect and living stateside in Florida and New Orleans, Louisiana, and Texas, and prior to coming to New Jersey, and it's been 23 years, so now I'm wondering if those storms are chasing me. But in all seriousness, a year ago today, portions of New Jersey, and especially Somerset County, we were hit by Hurricane Ida, leaving destruction in its wake. This took 6 lives of Somerset County residents. And I want to thank you, Governor, for being here yet again as we press forward and coming here last year, seeing the devastation firsthand in Hillsborough and Manville. Meeting with the families that were displaced and struggling to get through the day, and listening to their stories and their needs for recovery. I want to thank you for delivering much of that support right here in Somerset County over the past year and visiting us again today with the news of additional resources, and we again say thank you. I especially want to thank the firefighters, the sheriff's officers and local police, dive rescue teams, emergency management, 911 communications operators, public works teams, and everyone else who risked their safety and their lives to protect so many of our friends and families, and we applaud you. And while we have so many of our governing body here today from Somerset County, a special shout out to Commissioner Doug Singletary, who is the liaison for public safety and 911 emergency management, who's been at the forefront of this from the beginning. But most importantly, as we move forward in recognizing that this was the 4th major storm which devastated us in 23 years, we have to prepare and plan for the next one. This is why Somerset County is using its resources to work collaboratively with our municipalities to prepare for these future storms. And some of those efforts include the county OEM working with each municipality to ensure they have extensive plans in place coordinated with the counties and with other towns, their communication systems and backup plans at the ready. We continue to purchase open space to protect wetlands, including our first recreational open space project in partnership with Manville in what is considered Lost Valley. They were heavily impacted by Ida. And last week, we allocated $7.6 million from the American Rescue Plan to upgrade sewer and water systems serving 13 towns. These efforts will be better able to handle stormwater and are working towards a second round, and we're working towards a second round of grants for Somerset County towns. And in 3 weeks, in this very facility, our planning department has invited representatives from all 21 towns to work cooperatively towards a regional stormwater management modeled after FEMA's program that accelerates projects that prevent and manage flooding. In all of this work, we are so glad to see so many partners working alongside us, partners at each level and in every municipality, our federal agencies such as FEMA, our state agencies such as Emergency Management and DEP, and of course, you, Governor Murphy. Thank you. Together, we can make sure that we are prepared for the next storm, and no matter when it occurs, we'll be ready and not getting ready. Thank you.
Chanel, to you and your colleagues in this county, thank you for everything you do. I was sitting here just thinking back, before we hear from our last speaker, of the communities that I visited, in some cases with my wife, in the days that followed Ida. So at one level, you think about, Sean, we were together here in Hillsborough, Manville, East Amwell, not terribly far from each other, central Jersey communities, having a fair amount of similar characteristics, obviously each unique. But then add to that list Lambertville, which I mentioned, Mullica Hill, way down south, Irvington, where there was death, Elizabeth, where there was death. So this is not only a reality that we're dealing with in a homogeneous sense, this is hitting us in all different types of communities, different geographies throughout our state. And we've all said it, let history here be prologue for what we need to do in the future. Last speaker, representing an important player here, which is the Department of Community Affairs. Please help me welcome the Deputy Commissioner who is responsible for disaster recovery and remediation, Sam Biavatni. Sam?
Thank you, Governor, for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Sam Biavatni, and I serve as the Deputy Commissioner representing disaster recovery and mitigation for the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Unfortunately, the Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver, who also serves as DCA Commissioner, is unable to attend today's event. On behalf of the Lieutenant Governor, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the state's Hurricane Ida recovery efforts to date. Lieutenant Governor Oliver and I, along with the disaster recovery team at DCA, know people affected by Ida need help as soon as possible. We've been speaking to residents and local officials for months to understand their needs. And we do know they're coming, and we do know where they're coming from. Personally, my family's home in Caldwell was impacted by Ida, and I know firsthand how disruptive the storm's impacts have been. Moreover, I understand the frustrations that come along with recovery. Though we've been communicating with folks who were impacted by the storm for months, it was only May 24th, just 7 weeks ago, when DCA received official notice from the federal government the state will receive $228 million in CDBG-DR funding for Ida recovery. As soon as DCA received this notice, we hit the ground running to work through the lengthy federal process. Here's what we've done in the last 7 weeks to comply with the federal rules. DCA developed a citizen participation plan and outreach strategy in order to reach residents impacted by Ida. We've met with county and municipal officials, nonprofit organizations, community action agencies, and advocacy groups such as the New Jersey Organizing Project, Fair Share Housing, and the Latino Action Network. We've created an online survey to hear from folks about what type of assistance is needed and how funds should be allocated. To date, nearly 5,000 people have completed this survey. As a result of direct mail correspondence with Ida-impacted households, a social media campaign, ads in ethnic newspapers, community outreach activities, and engagement with news outlets. We've utilized this feedback we received from stakeholders and the input from the survey responses to draft our Hurricane Ida Recovery Action Plan. The draft action plan was posted for public comment, as the governor alluded to just recently, on August 17th. Now, DCA is asking people to comment on the action plan during the public comment period that runs until September 16th. People can submit this comment through the DCA website, by email, mail, phone, or attending our upcoming public hearings in 2 communities hard hit by Hurricane Ida. We'll be in Manville on September 8th and Newark on September 12th. Both hearings will run from 6 to 8 p.m. Our final action plan will be submitted to HUD by September 28th and include all comments received over the 30-day public comment period, as well as the state's response to those comments. HUD then has 60 days to review and approve. Under the action plan, the state proposes to allocate $152 million to housing recovery programs that will help owners restore storm-damaged homes, supplement rental housing costs for low-income rental families, provide temporary rental assistance to homeowners while they're out of their houses, while being repaired or rebuilt, provide zero-interest forgivable loans to owners of rental properties damaged by Ida, buy out residential properties located in flood-prone areas, and provide support services such as housing counseling to homeowners and renters impacted. The state's even proposing to launch a pilot program that would subsidize the development of resilient and energy-efficient affordable housing in lower flood risk areas that are in or near communities participating in DEP's buyout programs. The idea is to move people who are being bought out to new homes in safer locations. The state also proposes to allocate $58 million in infrastructure programs that will help Ida-impacted communities become more resilient to current and future natural hazards, modeled after FEMA's BRIC program, protect investments that state and local governments have already made in communities, and fund non-federal cost share for state and local facilities eligible under FEMA's public assistance program. Finally, the state proposes to allocate $6 million to planning programs that develop a statewide housing mitigation strategy tool to assess the housing stock in disaster-impacted and at-risk areas, and that build on the existing efforts of Resilient NJ, which is a comprehensive climate resilience assistance program that was set up following Superstorm Sandy to support local and regional climate resilience planning. We know help can't come soon enough for people and communities affected by Hurricane Ida, but we're working through the federal process as quickly as we can while diligently following the federal rules. With the leadership of the Lieutenant Governor and the commitment of the staff at DCA, I'm confident we're on the road to a fair and equitable recovery that will lead to a more resilient New Jersey. Thank you.
Sam, thank you. Well done. That's it. I want to thank Sean, to you and your colleagues here in Hillsborough, this great community. Tom, thank you for everything you do down in Washington to get us our fair share. Dave, thanks to you and the colleagues, the great colleagues at FEMA. Chanel, to you and your rockin' leadership team in Somerset County, and Sam, to you and the DCA team, and to all of you, especially the first responders who are brave and heroic every day, but especially on that wild day a year ago today. Thank you all.